the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is EDtech, episode 21, recorded Tuesday, October 22nd, 2013. There needs to be a reason to touch. This is EdTech, the education market-focused AV podcast put on to you by the fine folks of AVNation. My name is Tom Albright. I'm your host. I am a technology manager for a small community college outside of the fine city of St. Louis, who will currently be in the process, by the time you listen to this, of sweeping the horrid Boston Red Sox out of the World Series. Someone who disagrees with me is someone who's close enough to Boston for it to count. Mr. Scott Tyner from Bates College. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, and history does sometimes repeat itself.
Not the Boston Red Sox, they don't.
And I believe that the last time we played the Cardinals, they were swept. And so we're looking at the first team to repeat in the to three-peat in the 2000s. Thank you very much.
I will say this: I've had a couple of really good friends who are Red Sox fans. We were your curse breaker, and that's all you're getting out of us. So, all right. Other people who are on here with us is Greg Brown. He's from UCLA. How are you, sir?
Still mourning my Dodgers.
I'm sorry. Do they play baseball on the West Coast? All right.
Not very well.
Last but not least.
Yes. If you discount us showing up for the third inning and leaving in the eighth, yes, there is baseball on the West Coast. There is baseball
on the West Coast, of course. And last but not least, Matt Silverman. He is with George Mason University. How are you, sir?
Doing well. And, well, I've been mourning my Mets for many, many years.
Years, yes. Although, you know what? They had a shot. You know what? One person I'm glad about, not that this is a sports broadcast, oh, for crying out loud, his name went out of my head. Starts with a B. Played with the Mets for a number of years. Bertrand. He has a shot, at least, at getting a ring. I'm not going to comment on how good of a shot he does, but at least he's on one of the two teams for the first time in his career. So,
we'd probably do a sports show as well as we do an AV show.
Let's hope we would do it better. Actually, a couple of guys have threatened to do a sports AV show. Both Matt Scott, George Tucker, myself, some other guys who are heavy into sports that look at the AV side of it. So it's just something that never has kind of, I don't know.
I think with some of those guys, you could pull two random words out of a hat and they could do a podcast on it.
Yes, you could. Then now that's all I'm going to say about that. The first story is the biggest story, at least the last couple of weeks, and that's the fact that Mitsubishi is getting out of the projector business. Not only the projector business, but also the flat panel business. They're going to have some display manufacturing done, but they are not slowly but surely. It was like all of a sudden, here you go, guys. According to the guy that runs Mitsubishi projectors, he said it was not an easy decision. It was not something made overnight. It was a long, hard process. It was a long, hard decision. But the fact of the matter is that they aren't able to get the yield out of their factories, and they don't have the market share to make what appears to be a very small, slim margin work for them. Matt, Mr. Silverman, we'll start this off with you. How big of a deal is it that Mitsubishi is getting out of the display business?
I've never used their product, so I couldn't say. I think what this says to me is if anyone thought displays, projectors weren't commoditized, this truly, says that. It's, it's really a sign that I'm not sure how much, particularly in the mainstream market, there's distinction between vendors anymore with a lot of product.
Well, and is this the same as with speakers? Because I've been told more than once by people smarter than me that there are really 3 or 4 speaker manufacturers in the world, and everybody is just a derivative of that. Is it the same thing with projectors?
I think in a lot of ways. I mean, I won't say that everyone's getting OEM'd at the same place or anything like that yet, but in a way that outside of specialty applications, I'd say anything mainstream, what we do in a classroom, outside of your showcase rooms, I'm not sure really how much brand distinction there is anymore in what you're going to see. And, when you look at it, I think a lot of shopping now is done on specifications, which, at least for me, as long as I've been in the business, I've been doing speaker purchasing based on specification. So I don't really have those applications where I need something super. And I think this is just kind of the end game. One thing I've heard a lot about Mitsubishi is, they had a multi-format monitor. CRT monitor, which I think everyone used. And that was their real distinguishing product in the market. Now, that was before my time in the industry when that thing was really around. So I guess that kind of gives you where my perspective is, that I'm just not – I understand why they did it because they just really didn't seem to have as much market share anymore.
Yeah. Scott, when it comes to Mitsubishi and being another player in this market, how big of a deal is it that they're getting out of this game?
I don't think it's a big deal at all. Not that any of us singularly are the greatest representation of AV tech managers or institutions, but I've never used Mitsubishi. I've never thought about using Mitsubishi. But that's as Matt said, that's not even a hit on Mitsubishi. It's the projectors are just you probably use a projector simply because it's the one you bought one day and just kept on buying it, or your predecessor used it. I think the interesting thing about this market is when you look at it and say, some of what we've talked about in the past, what if you were tied into Mitsubishi? What if everything you had was Mitsubishi? What if that's what all your programming was? Now, what do you do now? You need to start coming up with a plan as to how you're going to swap these out and how you're going to support whatever you choose, which also to me leads to, if I was a sales guy or a regional rep for one of these other projector markets, now's the time to start hitting some of these guys up and make some pretty good deals to be the replacement.
Yeah. Mr. Brown, do you use Mitsubishi? Have you used Mitsubishi?
We're a small user. I have 5 of them. Okay. And although I know somebody in that position, a good friend of mine who's a tech manager at a Southern California area college, I will leave it at that, because when I mentioned that he has Mitsubishis in every room to the tune of about 400 of them.
Holy cow.
Oh, yeah. He was he was the one who initially he was the first I heard about it, because he sort of emailed me in a little bit of a, whoa, do you know anything about this? I have all Mitsubishis. And that's when I started pinging on you guys to see if you guys knew anything. And he's a little kind of beside himself. And obviously I don't want to mention what school, because every sales rep in the West Coast is going to be calling on him. But he very quickly was asking for some recommendations, and I told him what we tend to use and our experience with it, and he's starting to quote some other brands as replacements. So there are plenty of people to step up. I mean, Mitsubishi tended to be a little bit more on the smaller end of things, the smaller projectors, which that's just so freaking commodity now these days. I don't know who really isn't buying them on spec to a large extent. It becomes such a battle here, dealing with our purchasing department, because they'll, find something else with the same lumens and the same resolution. And, well, why can't you buy this? It's $37 cheaper. And, we got to go through the whole thing about control systems and stuff like that.
Well, to Scott's point, though, I mean, what about the whole idea of refreshing all of your projectors? I mean, is it just, it's a life cycle thing, and as your life cycle, whatever your life cycle processes are, whether it's 5 years or 7 years or 10 years, once that process gets to it, are we just going to replace the existing ones? Those of us who have them, I've got like 3 on campus here, and so my attitude was, when I tried them out one year, and it wasn't a bad experience. I'm more of a 3LCD guy than a DLP guy, so that's just my own personal preference. And I use them as
Ditto.
And I was using them as my test case for using DLP. And so my thing is I'm pretty much going to just switch them out once it comes to the time. And honestly, I'll go with what I've been going with for 5 or 7 years now. Is that the case, or should we really be actively looking to replace these because of support and lamp replacement and stuff like that?
I think you're okay if you've got them. I mean, Mitsubishi they're not going out of business. They're not going anywhere. I would tend to put my money on, they're gonna man up and they are going to support these for however many years they're supposed to support them, and lamps are going to be available and parts are going to be available. Not that many of us spend an inordinate amount of time repairing video projectors these days, but I don't think you're in a bad situation, just a really annoying situation of, yes, everything you've done up to this point has to change, and you're going to have to, pick a different brand and start transitioning to that as the time comes. But I don't think parts and lamps are going to be an issue with a company from Mitsubishi. And to their credit, I've only got 5. I never had any problems with them whatsoever. And this friend of mine who's got over 400 says they've been essentially perfect. Has never had any issues with them. So I'm sad to see him go, because they clearly are, a lot better company than some of the ones is probably a little bit of a strong word, but some of the people we've got playing in this market. But
I think, like you said, Greg, your hair is not on fire right now because of this. But at the same time, it's, 2 or 3 years down the road, you need to put a plan in place. You need to be ready so that when that projector dies in 3 years and you've used up all your spares, now you've got to do some programming. Maybe you got to do some, changes to the RS-232 or the IP control. So it's like, okay, now I need to pay attention to this, whereas before I've been kind of just an autopilot with the way the projectors work. And it's an interesting thing about the market that Mitsubishi makes this great projector, better than, like you said, other brands, and yet it's not making them money. I think that's enough that they're going to close that line out. Says something about that market.
Yeah, and also look at quite a lot of what's been going on the last few years with the better companies, I dare say, is we've seen things where lenses are lenses fit across a larger group of the family, or an older group of the family. You can reuse lenses. We have some projectors we're rolling out now where they have a newer lamp and a longer life lamp, but the lamp also retroactively works in the older model, and some of the better companies have been doing stuff like that. And if you've been using that in the case of Mitsubishi, you're basically screwed then. You don't have the advantage of taking advantage of those aspects.
Well, and when it comes to getting the programming up and running, what you can do is you can go to the newly improved and brand new out of the box Crestron application market. Yay! Have you guys played with this yet?
I have not.
A little. I was able to download a module from it. That's about as far as I went.
Scott, have you downloaded or uploaded any of your own modules?
I have not, no. But I've looked at it, and I'm. It's very interesting.
Yes.
It's one of these things I don't know what to say because I'm not.
Long pause.
There's a future here, and it's just it's so forward looking that I'm not sure yet what to make of it.
Really, you think it's? I see it more of as a catch up to things like Android Marketplace and the App Store, the iTunes App Store, because here's the thing. First of all, you don't need a login and password, which is very interesting to me, to get these modules. Now, yes, you still have to get the programming software from somebody, right? You still have to get System Builder. You still have to get Simple Windows or Simple Plus to program a system. So I don't know why then you don't need a login for this, because basically this replaces, if you guys are familiar with Crestron, this replaces their integrated module download place on the website. Matter of fact, when you go to the Crestron website and you click on that area, this is what it takes you to is the application market.
Oh, I didn't realize they had completely switched that
Yes.
over.
Yeah.
So here's what I was thinking. Obviously, I mean, it's not forward thinking in the fact of buying these modules, but it's about a year ago I did a talk with Infocom, and one of the people there who's well known in the industry, and I'm not going to not say his name because for any reason other than I might slightly misquote him, and I don't want to do that. But he was saying, the future of AV is in programming and is in software. It's not hardware and it's not integration. And to see this happen here, where you've got these people selling this thing and making money off of it, I think is just this part of this whole change that is that I'm still working through in my own mind.
Okay.
And I think one of the things you said, Scott, you thought it was forward-looking. Tim, you thought they were lagging behind. I think that really depends on your reference point, because if you look at it from the AV industry, this is very forward-looking.
Yes.
If you look at it from the IT perspective, this is catch-up. And I think there's a lot of potential here. I'm scrolling it really quickly right now. I'm not even sure. I think I'm seeing like one or two apps that are actually uploaded for sale by a third party, and those look to be themes. So it definitely puts a place, particularly for some of these companies who have been, I'd say, almost niche companies that do graphics or, do modules on demand. They now have a better place to let customers know, and those customers may be us, they may be other programmers, that they have modules available. And I think that's really good, because I know we've occasionally looked for if someone had something out there. So
I'm really curious to know, and I don't know if you guys have an answer to this. So this has been such a debate for so long about who owns programming, and one of the issues with programming is if I give it to you, you steal modules and reuse it. So I decide I've got a module that I wrote for, even if it's for Crestron, I wrote this cool module for the Capture HD system. If I put it up there, does Crestron now, or will Crestron ever have a way of saying this can be used once?
That's a good question. So can you only put it? Will they have a way of saying this is a one-use module?
Right. Because otherwise, that makes me decide if I'm going to sell it for 99 cents or $999. If I'm going to sell it to George Mason or UCLA who's going to put it in 400 classrooms for $999, or I'm going to sell it to somebody who's going to put it in 5 classrooms for $999. It doesn't make sense there.
And I'm not sure. I'm taking a quick scan on their uploading stuff, and they really don't say much, except that they take 30% off the top for administration.
Wow.
But that's actually pretty much standard with apps markets.
Yeah. Actually, I think Apple takes more than that. So
yeah,
but it's Apple, so.
Administration.
Well, they have to post it and put the pretty pictures on it. And actually, I think there's only one actual paid app, and it's like Matt said, it's a theme from Riviera. It's a neat theme, but I mean everything else here. We were talking to one of the guys that does our control show, Steve Greenblatt, and he actually has a couple of modules on here, kind of back doorways, because he's been contracted by a couple of manufacturers to help them with their authorized integrated module. And it's a situation, he didn't tell me who it was, but it was a situation where a lot of these companies, a lot of these manufacturers will go in partnership with Crestron, and then they'll have a module that they authorize, and they talk to their products relatively seamlessly, and the graphics are all what they want them to be. Apparently, they'll hire third-party programmers to help them with those, and apparently Steve and Control Concepts has helped a few of these. Now those are the free ones, but Steve obviously got paid by the original manufacturer to do those. So,
I'll say the big win overall is that you actually have a search box to find modules now.
Yes,
which didn't exist before.
That's nice. I think all this is like one of the other changes Crestron made couple months ago, or additions that they made. I forget what the what that addition to their site was that we were talking about. But I think all of these companies, Crestron with these things, and AMX with the wizard we've all been playing around with, RPM. I think they have all realized that they lose a tremendous amount of market share to the perceived bugaboo that is programming, justifiably or not. I mean, I have through this change we've done where we, made this transition from button panels to program touch panels. It's amazing all the people I've run into who, oh no, we can't do that because we won't deal with the program. We can't do the programming in house, and programmers, ooh, bad, can't do that. It's there are. And yes, plenty of programmers have done some pretty, nasty, illegitimate things, and people get stuck without their source code and stuff like that. But there is just this hugely contrived fear, I think, of dealing with the programming that I think, your Crestrons and your AMXs are realizing. We need to start taking some chunks out of this and making this more accessible. I think that's largely what this is another effort towards.
No, and there's probably something to said for that, because Crestron has got to embrace the consumer a little bit more than maybe they have in the past. And I part of me, that my first initial reaction to that was that's what they're doing here, right? They're being a little bit more forward facing. They're getting out from behind their dealers a little bit out from behind their programmers, and they're touching the customer, head on. This is kind of an extension of their experience centers, both in LA and New York and other places, where they're reaching out to the end user, the actual end user. And saying, here we are, we're Crestron, this is how you get a hold of us. But they're reaching out, and they're not relying as much on the dealers and the integrators as they maybe have been in the past. And I think that's maybe part of this as well. So.
Right.
Oh, we've seen that we've seen all that specifically through their A+ folks and the way they've reached out now to higher ed for a number of years. So hands on.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Scott.
I was just say that that it makes the users ask for Crestron as opposed to saying I want automation in my house. It makes that end user have seen some of this stuff maybe and say I want the Crestron stuff.
I want the Crestron. Give me the Crestron.
I want the Crestron.
Something that I started, and it's probably been the most interesting conversation I've had on LinkedIn is from time to time we'll promote some of our other shows that we do through starting conversations on LinkedIn and Facebook and things of that nature. One was about the Sharp 32-inch IGZO monitor that has touch capability, or at least feedback. You can use a pen and interact with it and stuff. And so I just started the conversation. I said, when will Crestron, AMX, and the other manufacturers stop making touch panels, especially when you have things like the new Sharp 32-inch. You've got iPads that regular size you can get for $500. The minis obviously are smaller than that. You've got Android apps. You've got iPhones and this, that, and the other. And it wasn't quite a religious war, but oh my goodness. Everything from consultants, which God love consultants, who expect a very high degree of reliability and design and support, to integrators who go, look, you know what, I can buy 7 iPads for the cost of a Madero or a 6X or whatever. Those are AMX and Crestron touch panels respectively, and support them over the over the entire life cycle of it. So I'll ask you guys this, and if you would like to not join in the fray, that's fine as well. But Greg, I'll start with you. Will there become a time, or when will the time come when the control companies at least stop making them primarily? I don't think there ever will come a time when they stop making them all out, but where they're relying more and more on the consumer interfaces and focusing more on the back end.
I'm about 15 years away from retiring, I
Oh,
think.
nice.
You know, it'll. I think it'll be like the logarithmic scale. I think they will get closer and closer, and we will see more applications to do that. I mean, most the most of the control, controlling things with your iPad right now, at least as far as our big three companies, are really kind of turkeys as far as apps go, or usefulness.
Well, they're only turkeys as far as the programmer goes. I mean, because there are people who can make beautiful interfaces for the iPad. I mean, it all comes down to how you do it.
Well, you just can't, put it on the same subnet as your control system. Or if you do, you have all sorts of other drama going on. There's hoops like that we're not jumping through yet, and so those will get fixed, and we'll see more of them. I think we're still we're still a few years away before they're seriously threatened. I think. I don't see them changing anything too significantly or bailing out of corners of their market size wise in the next couple of years. So I don't know. Tell me I'm wrong, guys.
Matt, is he wrong?
You're wrong.
Or Scott, is he wrong?
Well, first of all, I have to I just
for.
had to clarify, Greg. Is that a California thing that you can't retire till you're 80?
Oh, wow.
I mean, I know the budget's bad over there, but it doesn't make much sense. No, I don't completely disagree with Greg. I think, but there's a part of me that says Crestron is a very interesting company to watch, because I think that, like Apple, they evolve and to some degree don't just see the future but create it. And when they first started doing the their apps for the Droid or for the iPad for touch panels, I thought the same thing. I think, my God, they're putting themselves out of business. And yet I think that they're smart enough to go, but somebody else is going to put us out of business with that same thing if we don't do it. So how do we make money on it? How do we transition? Sure, if you look at some of these commercial homes or even institutions like ours, it's going to be a long time before we have just iPads floating around in our classrooms, or that iPads are installed in the walls of these executive homes. But I think that you have to kind of try and see what Crestron's seeing when they allow things like that to happen. And I think that they know that there is an end to this, to a market somewhere along the way of an $8,000 by the time you're done with a V15 and DG2, an $8,000 touch panel. So I think that there's an end to its dominance. I don't know if there's an end to the product altogether.
So I'm going to take a little bit more of a middle-of-the-road approach here, and I think there's a place for both. One of the things which I have to say, and what I got more out of the the IPZO or whatever panel, the big one, that I got more out of that is it tells me how dominant touch is going to be in our future from a user interacting with content. So I think we're going to see that blow up. I've been talking about this at George Mason, that I've been trying to help my administration understand that we need a strategy for touch at every desktop in the next year. That we're just seeing between Windows 8, between any Apple device, so many touch-based applications out there that we need a strategy that we're going to get touch to every desktop monitor. And once you have touch on your monitor, you have some interesting options. And I'm not saying it necessarily replaces your touchpads, but you could have either executable apps, or I'm actually thinking back to a Crestron product that was actually introduced about 3 or 4 years ago. I'm not sure if any of you guys heard of it, which was the DVPHD GB.
Mm-hmm. The touch interface for that?
It had a touch interface. I believe, if I remember the history, it was actually first developed by a consultant, the Waveguide guys out of Atlanta for one of the Georgia universities. And then I believe Crestron acquired the IP there. But I think it was a way forward-looking idea that just it had a price point issue, but it also, I think, was almost too forward looking for its time. But it was a place where you married a touch panel with your content with some value added function. So you got kind of the best of all worlds. And I think some of that is coming down the pipe. I also kind of look at touch panels, and I really do believe there will always be a place for a purpose-built touch panel. It just may not be at the super high price point, because it allows you to create a self-contained audiovisual system which is not dependent on a third-party device, whether that's a PC or even your network infrastructure working. I look at our perspective. We used to do 15-inch panels, and our standard panel is now a 4.3-inch panel, but we wouldn't give it up for anything. And we're actually starting to think through designs. We have a lecture capture concept we've been playing with, where we're actually thinking about using a second panel where we keep our standard 4.3-inch, switching interface and add something like a 9-inch panel in to stream the video content to and allow them to handle all the lecture capture setup features. So I can see this going in both directions, but I do think we will see a lot more control and touch coming to monitors, probably more so than we will actually see it on iDevices, because I just haven't seen any sort of enterprise scalable iDevice or Android device infrastructure being offered by any control manufacturer yet. Most of them are really focused on the residential market.
Okay, so let's bring in another story that we have here, because it kind of goes hand in hand with this, and that's, if you haven't seen this yet, Fox News and their newsroom has these giant, let's just say it, big-ass tablets. They're actually called Big Area Touchscreen, or quote-unquote BATs. Here's the thing. The stuff like this, and they're ungodly large, and they're somewhat silly.
55-inch.
55-inch, but they're somewhat silly. But these are in somebody's actual workspace, and this is the new norm. Not a giant, almost, hilariously large touchscreen, but these are what kind of we've gotten to in the U.S., where we do expect touch interface, and we do expect it.
If you have not seen them, think of like sitting at a drafting table with the table tilted up there at a 45-degree angle or something like that, except instead of a table, it's a 55-inch touchscreen.
Yeah. So, is that kind of where we're at, where not just, this is kind of the evolution when it comes to newsrooms of, CNN's news wall and the quote-unquote 3D thing they did a few years ago. But, Fox News has all of these giant tablets now because...
I have to laugh because that's exactly what they look. They look like blown up iPads, and it's just ridiculous. It really is.
Honey, I Shrunk the News team.
So Tim, to me, I think it's very clear that newsroom, that's a gimmick to make it look really high tech. I think the touch is a way to go. I think it's. I've said this before on the show. I think the problem right now is that the user experience needs to completely change. There needs to be a reason to touch that screen. And even my kids, I brought home a Dell Interactive touchscreen before, and my kids who are going to be the early adopters, right? You've seen the baby who tries to touch the magazine like it's an iPad. They will grab a mouse and keyboard for a Windows interface because that's what it's designed for. It's not designed to touch it. And so until we really have designs that are made to be touched and manipulated, this is just a gimmick. This dude over here just keeps shrinking and enlarging the same thing over and over again. It's like, that's impressive, dude.
Okay.
I saw it. I saw what they were trying to do. I recorded it for a few days, and they were dealing with some sort of political topic, and somebody made some sort of statement, and as soon as they were done with that statement, they had on these screens, they had, the tweets from the other. It had to do with the government shutdown, and they had the tweets from, a bunch of people on the left and tweets from a bunch of people on the right, which, they all have their social media folks who are generating these things in real time, and they had all of these things queued up, and they were able to. They were basically bouncing between all of the social media in a way, and I'm not saying it necessarily worked great, but I saw what they were trying to do, bouncing between the tweets and the press releases and the things that were going on in real time, and trying to give much more of bring more of these alternative sources in real time, and juggle them and show them to the listener or the watcher in a different way, and it was
You need an oversized iPad to do that?
No.
It helps.
A lot of TV news is
Because
visual.
But the problem is that TV news doesn't even understand how to do what you're saying that they're trying to do. They don't even know how to do that. They don't know how to integrate social media into regular news. And then they go get a gigantic iPad because somehow that's the only way to do it.
Can we come to the consensus that
They were trying.
It's a gimmick. I mean, it kills me because I actually really believe that touch is where we need to go. But I really do think that Fox show was very much, it's a PR gimmick.
Okay, but hang on for a second though.
Yeah.
I will agree with you.
Yeah.
However, where do they get gimmicks from? And where do they pull them from? And what makes them effective gimmicks is the fact that they come from some connections that we already have when it comes to our use cases of technology. That's where they come from.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
And I think that I think if they had built, I don't know, a custom studio app. I mean, there's a couple things I look at and I say, from a design perspective, what are they trying to achieve other than gimmickry? Think about it. 1080p at like a foot away from the display it is not useful. If I've ever seen a use case for a 4K display, it's right there. So that's where I say, gee, this is kind of a gimmick. I mean, if they had built a purpose-built interface to do this on, where it could actually improve their workflow, okay, maybe. I just see this being PR. That being said, it did actually make me think about, a classroom application for this. And I do think this is one of the reasons I'm so bullish on touch. I could see our faculty members with a better size display, and it may be a local touch on their lectern rather than a big old board in front of them, that they could really use it effectively to, work with content. Mm-hmm. One thing that came to mind, I'm not sure, I think we've mentioned on the show before, but Bill Gates on an Ask Me Anything on Reddit, probably about a year back now, said his daily monitor is an 82-inch Perceptive Pixel touchscreen. He doesn't use a keyboard and a mouse anymore. But that's also someone who understands how to make a workflow.
Yeah.
Yeah, my comment on, I forget where I made this, might have been LinkedIn, was, I can see a lot of our professors seeing, people sitting in front of these monitors like that and deciding, my God, that is the thing that is going to revolutionize my class. I must have one of those in my classroom controlling everything. Thank goodness, all college higher ed instructors would not be caught dead watching Fox News. Otherwise, they might get some sort of an idea.
I don't know. With George Mason, that's can be a brownie point.
All right.
Except that's George Mason.
That's George Mason. That is not the forward-thinking area of Southern California higher education. So. You were listening.
Most of the people out here won't fly on a plane unless it's got two left wings.
Wow, he'll be here all week. You're listening to EdTech. That comedian right there is Greg Brown from UCLA. Matthew Silverman is here from George Mason, and Scott Tyner from Bates College. Moving on to touch and everything like that. We have a new head of Smart. Question is, Can Neil Gaidan actually do something with this very forward-thinking company, but somebody who has kind of hit a couple of missteps along the way? Scott, we'll start with you. Is Smart on better footing now that we've got a new CEO, or are they just...
No, they're not.
Okay, there you go.
Are they getting smarter?
No.
Are they getting smarter?
I think
Very
that,
nice.
The issue with Smart is that they were very forward thinking. Years ago when interactivity was new, they did a great job of selling it to the K through 12 market. I think, again, though, what they never really did well is be able to read the future and prepare themselves for the future. And so I don't know. I guess that I would think of, with all we've just talked about, that's out there for touch and out there for interactivity now. What does Smart offer that's got value to it?
Well, they have smart boards.
Oh, wait, no, well, you know what they do have? Let me tell you what they have, because I thought this was fantastic, and I want to go get one of these things right now. They have the Smart Room, which let me see here. The Smart Room, which runs on a button, and you just walk into a room, and you're connected magically somehow to web conferencing with people, just by walking into a room. And it's just like, first of all, we know that that's not true no matter what the product is. And so I don't, so they've got the smart board, and maybe part of this is, and I know we've talked about this before, and I know Matthew and I have talked about it, that the software is designed for K-12. Mm-hmm. So it's really hard for us to sell that software in a higher ed environment. So maybe I'm just out of it enough now, not in the K-12 market, to see any value in that. And if there's not value in the software, there's certainly no value in the hardware, because we can buy interactive things for less money.
Well, and that's kind of where I was going with that, because we've been talking about interactive touch panels and this, that, and the other. More than one person has said this about Smart in the last year and a half to 2 years. They should get out of the hardware business, take their software, which is incredibly forward-thinking, and license it to people who do want to make hardware and make it integrated. Integrate it into touch panels, integrate it into displays, into projectors, stuff like that.
They're doing that right now. They just struck a licensing deal with Epson.
Oh, wow.
But I don't know if that fixes it, because they need to fix their software first. They've never retired a feature, which is if you have to install it from an IT perspective, it is the most painful application to install and upgrade and maintain. It's just it doesn't scale well. And I'll tell you, on their as much as we talked about their interactivity, their monitors aren't touch. Their monitors are still pen-based. And we're actually starting to evaluate some alternatives potentially as early as the summer that we're transitioning from smart podiums. The only product which I think they actually have market leadership in right now is their interactive whiteboards. And when I say that, I mean the actual whiteboard, not the projector. Yeah. Bring your own projector. But if you need to project at 96 inches, which is still a little hard to do cost effectively on a monitor, that's the space that I see us still staying in. But the rest of our smart product, I don't know. I mean, and they just seem to be trying anything and everything, which to me, I don't know. They've almost smacked of desperation for the past year or so.
Greg, where are you when it comes to smart technology? Do you care? Is it just passé, whatever?
We don't really use much of it at all. And yeah, we've looked at some of their stuff. We didn't really feel it worked well in higher ed, but if they've had one saving grace in this market, it's that most of their competition has been worse. Some of these interactive boards that some of these other companies have come up with. Most of a number of the monitor companies have taken a stab at some sort of interactive monitor of some sort, which I think is still a viable app if somebody were to do it right. Most of what was out there was just, really, really frighteningly bad. And so we have one company that's losing the recipe, and a bunch of other companies that can't figure out the recipes. It's kind of, the blind leading the blind. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Smart bought up by one of these monitor companies in the next year or so. I just don't see them lasting long term. I just don't think they're too small of a company with too little of a direction, I think, to survive.
Well, they didn't change rapidly enough, and so they're essentially obsolete now. And so I think that marketing of their software and allowing it to be put into devices, licensing it, that's a good move. I completely agree with Matthew, though, that their software just bites. And it's slow. They've got floating tablets on the screen that you can't get rid of no matter how hard you try. Yeah. Honestly, we've gotten more calls about that. Can you please come get this thing off my screen than we have about how do I use this device. Now, what could Smart do? Well, some of the things we've already talked about. What if Smart was to get into the app market? Because that's a lot of what they used to have. They have this loaded piece of software that really could be broken down into a bunch of little apps, some math apps, some geography apps, some graphing apps, and those can integrate with anybody's interactive screens. So now we've got the interactivity, and we've got a piece of software that is designed to be used interactively.
Great. Now you're competing against, half the comp sci majors and higher ed across the country.
Well, yeah, they're not going to be the company they used to be. No question about that.
It's like everybody's coming up with an app for everything. I don't know. I just don't see where they have an avenue there on that one.
But
go ahead.
It's funny, and you mentioned this earlier in the show, and we talked about it a lot. It's something I think we're having a hard time coming to terms in the audiovisual business, that the future of our industry isn't hardware, it's software.
Yeah.
It's control programming, it's apps that do things, and then it's the delivery for that software. And it's something I've seen, and we've talked about it a lot internally here at the university, that I think a lot of our industry is just having a real hard time coming to grips with. That it's the money isn't going to be in the hardware long term. It's going to be on either infrastructure or software.
And that's valid, absolutely. Because the farther the more we go along, I mean, yes, there's going to be people who still make hardware. I mean, people still make IT switches, but the actual where everything is controlled is going to be in that virtual space that none of us really have a handle on. It's going to be the ones and zeros that control everything and make everything make the world go round. So, all right, guys, real quickly, one more story and we'll get out of here. From CE Pro from Cedia this year. Vanco Boost Adapter converts old HDMI cables to HD base T. When I saw this first, I was like, that's weird. So I looked into more of it a little bit. Here's where I kind of come down on this. First of all, it is a neat thing. It's a converter that takes your existing HDMI and converts it to HD base T. I'm still quite not sure where they were going with this, but what it brought me to is I'm wondering if maybe somebody's working on a copper version of this and taking your existing VGA cables and converting those into HD base T. That I would be in line to purchase. Greg, we'll start with you. Is this a good thing? Is this a useful product to have?
I saw this, and this was the let me file this away somewhere because it's just crazy enough that someday I may run across that one project where this makes everything come together and makes it actually work. It's pretty crazy, but if it works the way they say it does, it's a niche, but if you stumble across that niche, it would be a useful thing to have.
Yes, but I could just pull cable too. So,
well, the title that says all that legacy HDMI cable behind the walls.
That's
I don't
it.
have any HDMI cables behind my walls.
I don't have any legacy HDMI cable. No, it's brand new stuff.
Right, and certainly it's not behind my walls. I mean, everything for the past 6 years behind my walls has been Cat 5 or Cat 6. But I think what Greg said is right, which is, there's going to come a day where I'm going to go, oh, Jesus, I've got to change HDMI over to HD base T, and so it's good to know a product exists out there, but they're certainly not going to get an order for 40 of these from me tomorrow.
Yeah.
I got to say I'm confused, and maybe I'm missing something, but how does this differ from any other HD base T transmitter? Am I missing something here?
Well, yeah, an HD-based T transmitter actually transmit over twisted pair, and this one transmits over the existing HDMI.
Okay.
It's like the reverse.
Yes, it's a reverse.
Okay, right. Then I'm really confused.
Okay, so then I'm wondering why.
Thank you.
Why was it? Why? Yeah, I don't know. Okay.
I think you also have to keep it in terms of we all do our own projects to some extent or another, and you stumble across that project where you've got the existing cables and you would like to do some crazy upgrade over winter break when you've got a week or something like that, and this would let you pull that off and ignore your cable infrastructure. That's the place for something like this, at least in our world. I would love to. I think this might be probably more of a Cedia. It's probably more at residential. Ideally, I think.
But let's not be foolish. We have all used residential products before in one way, shape, or form.
Absolutely.
So let's say you have a Mitsubishi projector.
Oh, jeez.
And in 2 years from now, you can't replace it, and the only one you can replace it with is one with HD base T. But you've got HDMI run between the projector and the source. Bam, you've got your solution.
That's your use case right there.
Yes.
Very well done, Mr. Tyner. On that
You're
note,
welcome.
We're going to go bye-bye. His name is Scott Tyner. His full-time gig is at Bates College. He also blogs a very, very well-written blog for Rave Publications. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
How can people find you, get a hold of you?
Mostly on Twitter. I hear you guys talking about LinkedIn today, and I'm like, God, I'm missing all this stuff on LinkedIn. I got to get on there. But I'm on LinkedIn, but just not enough, apparently.
Well, yeah, none of us have as many followers as Mr. Brown does. I think he's like a 5,000 or something. How many connections do you have on LinkedIn?
I think it's 570.
500. Yeah, you just passed 500.
I tried, my connections are people I know, and just like LinkedIn tells you, don't connect to somebody you don't know. It's dangerous. So I don't.
Well, yeah, I'm connected to my dad, and I think somebody else. That's pretty much it. Greg Brown from UCLA. Thank you, sir.
The most dangerous people I'm connected to are clearly you guys.
Well, that is true. How can people find you, sir?
LinkedIn, Twitter, and Infocom All Voices blog.
Have you written for them recently?
Actually, yes. I did my first of my 2 Infocom blogs. The second one will be out shortly.
In time for Infocom 2014?
Infocom 2013.
Jeez. Last but not least, my buddy Matt Silverman. He is, I affectionately call him my standards guy because he's incredibly involved in the standards committee at Infocom, but he also works for George Mason University. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And how can people find you, get a hold of you, stalk you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is generally the best place. Okay. I usually respond to stuff there.
All right, very good. If you'd like to follow me, Twitter or you know what, just go by the website. That's the best place, avnation.tv. avnation.tv, you'll find this program, the history of it and all that jazz. Our weekly program, AV Week, as well as a number of other monthlies and One on Control and social networking and things of that nature. So yeah, go by the website, avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. This has been EdTech.